Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021, the first Sea of Tranquility episode of the new year. I am your host, Pete Pardo, along with my co-host today, Mr. Rich Catino. Welcome to Ranking the Albums. Today, we're going to take a look and rank the studio albums of Finland's own power metal legend, Stradivarius. So, Rich, Happy New Year. Welcome
Happy New Year.
As we kick off the new year at Sea of Tranquility together. And how are things in your neck of the woods?
Doing good. Everybody's healthy, made it through the holidays healthy. So that's the important thing, right? For now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rich and I were just talking. Rich and I are both East Coasters. So we were both talking about the snow that we're expecting today. He's already got it by him. It's coming like any minute now here. So, hey, whatever, right? Winter time in the USA on the East Coast. That's what you got to expect. So
snow's falling and we're ranking Stradivarius. It's kind of perfect, right? Kind of fitting.
I think so, right? I mean, they get a lot of snow over in their neck of the woods over there. So, Scandinavia, they're used to this kind of weather. So, we've got a big catalog here today. So this is 15 albums in total.
Yeah.
And I will say, and we'll see what Rich thinks about this statement here, but this is a band that I've been listening to for a long time. Probably, I think I started really getting into them probably by their fourth album or so.
Same here.
And they really don't have any bad albums. They have a couple albums that I think are weaker.
Yeah.
But I would say probably 80 to 85% of this catalog is of such high quality that it's almost really hard to separate the albums from each other. Like in re-listening to all these over the last week or so, I'm like, yeah, that album's great. That album's great too. And a lot of them are very similar. Of just like this really high quality, high standard, this was hard for me to rank.
But it's interesting though. It's 3 hours though.
It totally is. You got
the Tolkien era where he's singing.
Right.
Then you got the classic era from 95 to 2002, I think it is. That's Elements, right? Part 2.
Yep.
And then you got the new era with the new lineup from Polaris, right? Polaris was 2009 up to Eternal. So there's 3 eras, which are a little different.
It's like the music is pretty consistent throughout for the most part.
But it's a little different though, I noticed.
It is, yeah. And I especially think, we're going to get into this, but I think like for me personally, this band really started clicking when Timo Kultapelto joined.
Yes.
Not only, Timo Tolkki, fine vocally for what he did, I think, for the most part. But I think that the other Timo, he's an amazing singer.
Yeah, his range is
exactly. And one of those singers I think does not get enough credit in, contemporary heavy metal, whether you're talking power metal, prog metal, whatever. He doesn't get enough credit for being one of the best singers out there. But more importantly, he's a really good songwriter. And I think the early part of the catalog, which we'll touch on here, was really missing that. They Tolkien is a great arranger, but I think they needed that really strong songwriter and that just amazing vocalist to front this band. So the day he joined was the day that this band became a premier band in this genre. So.
And Fourth Dimension is a great album. I love that album.
Yeah. There's a lot of great albums here. So we're going to start at number 15. This might take an hour, and it's okay. And we're going to work our way to number 1. So I'll have Rich kick us off.
Well, they started out in the late 80s. Everybody doesn't know that. So Fright Night came out in 89.
Yep.
They've been around for a long, long time.
Long time.
And they were really important in the 90s too. Them, Blind Guardian, Gamma Ray, and Iced Earth, I would say, were like the big 4 of the 90s.
Yeah, of the kind of newer bands, because you got Halloween was already an established force by that time. So yeah, these were the next guard. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go with the self-titled one from 2005. Is it? I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just Stradivarius. So this is a weird time. This is after Tolkien was having some issues. He brought in that girl, if you remember, temporarily. It was a possibility. And all the promo stills, she was had blood in her hands, and it was, I don't know what was happening there. Creatively, it was a weird time for them. So luckily
they were coming apart at the seams.
Yeah. Luckily they didn't follow through with all that. So this is the album that came after that. So I'm really not a fan of this one. Like if you remember the lead song Maniac Dance,
Yeah.
like the riff is good. It's heavy, you know, like I like it. It's crunchy and everything, but like the lyrics, do you remember the lyrics to that? I know it's reflective of Tolkien's struggles, which is fine, but the album is just a little.
So I'll read them. So this year has been a nightmare.
Right.
I've been so low, I don't care.
Yeah.
I've dwelled in depths of darkness, swam across the ocean of pain.
Yeah.
I've tied the tabloids, the media. It's a bottomless pit.
Bottomless pit. Yep.
I mean, the whole
Yeah.
song is just basically him spewing, and
Yeah.
he was going through some serious shit at the time.
He was. So I understand why it's on the album, but Fight is good and upbeat. Just Carry On is very spirited. I like that song. Gypsy and Me. So those probably Gypsy and Me and Just Carry On are the two that I really like from this album. But everything else, I never go back to it. Just doesn't work for me. I understand, like I said, it's almost like they're saying anger almost.
Yeah, I mean that's a good comparison.
A transition, struggling, a creative stump in the road, I'd say. Yep.
It's my number 15 as well. This album just, I talked before about how about 85% of their catalog is really, really good.
Yeah.
That other 15, this is at the bottom of that lower half. Obviously, we're both picking this at the bottom. Like I mentioned, this just sounds like a band that just nothing happened for him right now at this point in time. Tolkien was the driving force in the band. He's having all sorts of issues.
Right.
The album itself stylistically is very different. I mean, it's more like a straightforward kind of metal hard rock album. Not that that's a bad thing. And there are some decent songs here.
Yeah, Just Carry On and Gypsy and Me and I think Fight are very traditional Strato out of the
And Back to the Madness is a decent enough track. I think Leave the Tribe isn't bad. There's some elements on here that are decent enough, but it just sounds like every other band that was out at the time. And I remember when this album came out and I reviewed this, I was kind of like, you know what? Stradivarius used to have a unique sound. Everything they did kind of set them apart from everybody else. And then this came out and it just sounded like every other band out there. And I think that's what just really killed it. And, Tolkien would leave the band, later that year. Their longtime bassist, Jari Kanulainen, or however he says his name, he would leave after this album. So all of a sudden you had this band in, falling apart, kind of in transition. And as we will get to shortly, they didn't miss a beat. They basically reconfigured the lineup and they just kept continuing on doing what they do best. And, just goes to show you that sometimes in hard rock and metal, and we've seen plenty of instances over the years where you have a driving force in the band, whether it be a singer or a guitar player who leaves or dies and the band continues on and they continue on as if nothing ever happened. And it can happen, right? And I think a lot of people, when Tolkien left, this was his band. When he left, they're like, "Oh, there's no way Stradivarius is ever going to recover from this." And they've been going strong now for 15 years, close to it, right?
Timo Kotopelto and Jens Johansson, the keyboard player,
became the guys. Yeah. Yep. And that just goes to show you back what I mentioned before is how important Timo Kotopelto has been to this band.
Right.
He became the number one songwriter. He became the front man. This became his band. And he had the balls to carry it and carry on with it. So,
and he's got two very good solo albums too that are melodic, melodic AOR rock. Really cool.
Yeah. He's a phenomenal singer. I mean, he really is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You never should have doubted him, right?
Right. All right.
Back to you.
14, right?
Yep.
So going with the debut, Fright Night, which is a cool album. I do like this for what it is. But it's before, obviously, they got into their stride with the formula. So it's much more traditional heavy metal, but it still has elements of power metal that are sneaking in a little bit, but not quite there yet. A little bit of keyboards too, but it's not dominant like what would come later. So I would say the best tracks off of this are Future Shock, Black Knight, the title track Fright Night, which has a little bit of that proggy element to it at times, and probably Night Screamer out of the 9. You got 2 instrumentals, so 7 out of the 9 are songs, and you got 2 instrumentals. False Messiah is interesting too. Has a couple of those proggy elements that he throws in there, the different changes.
Yeah.
This is it's a fun start, but it's not what they were going to be yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool
Well,
cover too.
You can leave it out because that's also my number 14. We're 2 for 2 today, Rich. I really thought we were going to be completely different today with all these albums, but so far we're not. Yeah, I mean, as a debut album, it's fun, and I love the album cover.
Yes, very cool.
Right, the album cover is great. It's not as polished as future efforts. For me, Tolkie's lead vocals on that album are the weakest out of the handful that he did before the other team joined. They're kind of hit or miss. I think he sounds better on the later albums that came after that. But like you mentioned, it's more of a straight ahead metal album. There are some neoclassical and power metal elements. I agree. Black Knight, is a really cool tune.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like neoclassical speed metal. I like Witch Hunt. Really good drumming on Witch Hunt. The title track for me is the song that kind of shows where they'd be heading. I mean, that has all those musical elements that are,
and it's 8 minutes. It's 8 minutes long as well.
It's big and epic, and they've done songs like that on almost every single album. And another thing too about this album for me, lyrically, it's not as developed. And again, that goes back to Coltapelto, who became the lyricist for this band. And I think the lyrics on this album are kind of cheesy, but
it's your standard, 80s power metal fantasy, scary stuff and things like that. Just
But it's like it's a fun album.
Just from the titles like Witch Hunt and Fire Dance and Fright Night and Night Screamer and Darkness.
But it's good. It's a good album. It's a solid debut. It's just it's not top shelf Stradivarius by any means.
And the drummer actually gets a credit on 5 of the songs for co-writes as well, or lead writer. So he was pretty. His last name is Lasilla. Yeah, Lasilla.
Yeah,
he was pretty prominent in the songwriting category for those guys at the time.
Early on,
yeah.
Before the great Jorg Michael joined the band, right?
Yes, love Jorg. Man,
he's titan on the drums.
In the 90s, every album that he showed up on, it was great. He was in Gravedigger for a couple albums, and those albums were great. Running Wild, he was there for several, and those albums are crushing killer. And Stradivarius, he was in the golden era of the band. So
yeah, he's a very, very good drummer.
He's like the Lucky Rabbit's foot.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Okay, so
all right, number 13.
I don't have the cover for this one, so I'm going with Eternal, the most recent one. Do you have that one?
No, I don't. I only have that on digital.
Yeah, same thing here. So let me see. I got to go to it. So what year did that come out? 2015.
15. Yep.
So 5 years ago already. So this is with the new guitar player, the new bass player, and the new drummer. So you got Lori Pora is on bass, and Matthias, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's tough. Another one of those tough ones, right?
I think Kulpainen or something like that.
Okay, so he's on guitar, and he does a lot of production stuff for them too. Yeah, and he writes a lot. So this one, it's just very kind of like what happens, I think, with Elements Part 1 and 2. Becomes very a little bit repetitive from what they've done previously, from the previous 3 albums, I think. So the single was My Eternal Dawn. And what else did they have there? What was the other? Shine in the Dark. So those are pretty good. Lost Without a Trace, I wrote down that I liked. Let me see. That it's a grittier guitar too. Did you notice that? The guitars on this album is the most recent too. It's pretty gritty. The guitars.
I think the album before that one was more keyboard dominated. This was more guitar.
Nemesis.
For sure.
Nemesis was the one before this, right? Yeah. So yeah, In My Line of Work. There's a good rocker. I think Man in the Mirror is the best arrangement that they have on there. Lost Saga has the proggy changes and the epic. It's an epic 11 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's got its parts and its moments that I like. But out of the 4 newer ones, it's my least favorite, I think.
It's also tough because it's the most recent one, right? So we've talked about this many times before. It's like when you have like a band like this who have gone through lots of changes and
so many albums.
It's so many albums. It's like and if you've been a fan for a long time, it's hard to rank the more recent stuff compared to the classic stuff because you don't have as much history with it, right? So I always say, you know, on stuff like this, it's like, well, you know what, talk to me in 5 years and we'll see where you know, Eternal sits at that point in time. Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, but it's another one of those albums where you're talking about Colt Pelto has been writing. You also have all the members actually get credit on this album for writing.
Yeah,
all the guys. So everybody's, you know, part of the creative process with this whole new lineup.
Yeah, I think they have a formula. They do it well, and
But
it's
they
like, you know,
broke
one
it.
of the
They
things.
changed it a little bit though. I wrote that down though. With these 4 albums, they changed the formula. They have a couple of those standards from the past with the speedy power metal double bass songs, but there's a lot of them that have more progressive elements and a lot more
Yeah,
changes.
they don't rely on that double bass drum frenzy
As
manic
much.
style stuff that
Yeah.
they do quite a bit. Yeah, they haven't been doing that, you know, steady. Like, you know, you get a couple of them on every album, but they haven't
Right.
done like a full album of that in the long run.
No. Yeah, true.
All right, my number 13, if you got it, if you could pull it out, is Twilight Time from 1992.
Really?
That's their second album. Yeah.
Wow. Wait until you see where that appears for me.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I dig it. It's a good album. I think
Yeah.
to me, it's a big improvement over the debut.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I had forgotten how many years there were in between. I mean, that's the 3-year gap basically between those
Right.
albums. And I think that Tolkien sounds much better from a vocal perspective on that album.
Mhm.
And there's some really great songs on here. And again, you know, just because it's at number 13 doesn't mean it's not a really good album, because I think it actually is. Break the Ice absolutely crushes.
Such a great metal riff.
It's really, really cool. I think, you know, there's bigger guitars on this album than there was on the debut. That's another thing.
Yeah.
What else? You know, there's more keyboards on this album as well. You got the Hands of Time, which is traditional speedy power metal from Stradivarius.
Right.
Metal Frenzy is a, you know, if you want to hear Tolkien rip, I mean, he got a lot of, you know, creds early on as being like the next big kind of Scandinavian guitar shredder. And that's a perfect example of all he can do. What else is on here? Madness Strikes at Midnight, really cool proggy tune. I think that also kind of signaled where they were going as a band. A lot of good stuff on here. I don't know if I mentioned The Hills Have Eyes before, but it's a really solid record. I dig it quite a bit. I love the cover. That kind of started their classic album covers, I think.
Yes, love it. Great cover.
So that's my number 13. Again, really, really good album. I just think I like some of their other stuff a little better.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna go with Elements Part 2 for 12. So this was the second one that came like right after Part 1.
Yeah.
Which was 2001, right? I think they came out in the same year.
Yes, they did. Yep. A couple months apart.
Yeah. So let me see. I got to go back to the track listing here. So I enjoy a couple songs from it, but after I think Destiny, they really got into the rut of the formula, and that's where you can hear it in this album a lot. So I love the title. I mean, the first single, "I Walked My Own Song."
That's a good
I
one.
thought that was great. Seasons of Faith's "Perfection." It's okay. It's a ballad. "Awaken the Giants" a little slower, right? That's a slower one on the album, I think. But you got to know the difference, and "I'm Still Alive." It's those standard speedy power metal ones, so I could really do without those. Dreamweaver's cool. Liberty's okay.
Really good.
Alpha and Omega's, I think, a slow opener, I think. So I don't know, not my favorite. I think after Destiny, like I said, I think they got into a little bit of a creative rut, a little bit of repetition with some of the songs. So that's why this one falls at my 12.
Okay. Well, what I'll get to when I get to that, you know, they released those 2 albums, Part 1 and Part 2,
right,
fairly soon after each other. But
2003, both in 2003.
Yeah, but neither one sound like each other, which I thought was really cool. I mean, they could have done what a lot of bands have done, is they do like a one, and they both sound almost the same. I mean, not at all there. I think they're both very, very different albums.
This is a little more progressive in parts, I think, too. Maybe like Dreamweaver, I think, is one of the tracks, right?
There's some songs. I don't know. I think for me, I find the first one a little more symphonic, which
it is. I was going to say that when I get to that one. Yeah.
The second one is a little guitar heavier, I think, but you know.
Yeah. Dreamweaver and Liberty's very, you know, infinite title trackish.
Yeah.
You know, so like I said, there's moments, a lot of moments in this album which feel like it's a repetition of what they've done before. So that's why I put it in my 12.
All right, my number 12, I'm going to go to 2011's Elysium. Really cool album. Again, another really, really solid record. I always like the album cover. It's kind of
very cool.
Kind of different looking there.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to. This is another one of those bands. I know we seem to talk about this a lot, but there's some bands that just really know how to put a great opening track on an album. And these guys are another band that does that well. I think Darkest Hours is a great song. Big, vibrant,
Yep.
You got Under Flaming Skies, which is kind of fast. You got Infernal Maze, which is really melodic. Again, they like to mix it up on a lot of these later period albums. You got Lifetime of a Moment, which is a great symphonic metal track. Really,
you're picking out all the tunes that I wrote down for that album.
It's funny because they're not really the same kind of band, but I think that like Stradivarius, when they do that kind of symphonic metal thing at times, they almost like out Nightwish sometimes, I mean,
well, they became, they were out much earlier than Nightwish, so
yeah,
they had a head start on that.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of really good symphonic metal on this album. I think, Timo Kotapelto, he's always been a great singer, but I think, you listen to some of these more recent albums, and it could be due to the production that they're doing now. There's a lot of backing vocals on the latter period albums, and it really just makes him shine even more. So, and I think he sounds absolutely incredible on this album. Jens Johansson also is very prominent on this album. So, these latter period albums are very vocal and keyboard heavy. There's a lot of guitars too, but because these two guys are kind of like almost like running the show now, the music is kind of taking those avenues. But this is just a really good sounding album. A lot of good songs. I mean, you can't go wrong with a lot of these. No, you really can't. So that's my number 12. I dig it quite a bit.
Okay. All right. 11. So going Elements Part 1. The lead-off single was great, I thought. Eagle Heart.
Yeah.
Very good song. Solo of Vagabond is pretty cool.
Excellent song. Yeah.
Yeah, mid-pace song. But you got to Find Your Own Voice and Learning to Fly. Another one of your standard double bass, speedy power metal songs. So yeah, I don't need those. That's what I'm saying. Like after, from Destiny on, they did that too much on the albums. But you were saying something before about the symphonic element, I think.
Yeah.
Right. So this reminds me very like Disney type of sounds, like Fantasia, the song.
Yeah.
And Papillon. Papillon
is great. Yeah.
So it's got that almost like a Disney fantasy type of feel to it at times.
Which I almost wish they did more of, because I agree with you. I think they kind of ran that speedy power metal thing into the ground. Right. And that's why I like a lot of these later albums had a lot of those kind of big symphonic, Disney kind of big scope orchestral type things. And quite frankly, I think they do that stuff amazing. And they do. I'd rather hear a whole album of that.
Yeah. Right. So out of the whole 9 songs, you got 2 or 3 that are the typical speedy ones. And then you got a couple of those layered, Disney type of arrangements, like I feel they sound like. You got one instrumental, Stratofortress, which is very similar to previous ones that I think are better than that instrumental. A Drop in the Ocean is a cool acoustic ballad. Close out the album. So it's not bad. It's just not one of my favorites. There's several that I'll go back to. I go back to Eagle Heart a lot, Soul of Vagabond, maybe A Drop in the Ocean, maybe Fantasia once in a while, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I dig these albums more than you do, which is okay. All right. My number 11, again, I don't have the physical either, is Eternal from 2015, the most recent album. I mean, I dig this album. It's a good album. I don't have enough time with it, but I think it's still, I like all these recent albums, and I enjoy this one too. My Eternal Dream, big orchestral keyboards from Mr. Johansson. I dig it.
Yeah.
Loads of lead and backing vocals on this album. I mean, this album is really rich with vocals, and I really appreciate that quite a bit. Shine in the Dark, really memorable song. Rise Above It is kind of that more of the same speedy power metal type of thing. I think you mentioned Man in the Mirror.
Love that. That's my favorite.
Yeah, and I totally love the big epic, The Lost Saga. I think that's a great track. So
yeah, I wrote that one down too. That's 11 minutes.
Yeah. I think for me, like this newest album, I think half of it I really like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The other half is decent, right? But I think the really good stuff kind of, for me, helps this album rise a little bit above. I think, maybe where you had it on your list, just because I really dig the tracks quite a bit. But it's a solid latter period record from them. I mean, they're pumping up albums that you know what you're going to get, and what you get is really good. And it's just kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah.
All right. We're in the top 10, right? Yeah, we are.
Top 10. So going with the third one with Tolkien on vocals, Dream Space. I really dig this one. I think his vocals sound great. It sounds great on Twilight Time too. But this is really very creative in the arrangement department, I think. Nothing really, aside from you got Chasing Shadows, We Are the Future, and Shattered, which are the faster songs, the heavier riff-driven songs. But then in between, like Hold On to Your Dream is a great single. That should have been like a video, I think.
Yeah.
Very positive and spirited song. And then there's like Magic Carpet Ride and Fourth Reich and Tears of Ice and Thin Ice. And I mean, Atlantis is a minute-long instrumental, which is kind of useless, right? They should have just incorporated that into Abyss, which I love. That's one of my favorites. So it's got a lot of different moments that feel like Queensryche's Rage for Order, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of experimentation, keyboard sound changes. The keyboard works with the riffs. Sometimes the keyboard is a dominant sound in the song, but a lot of good melodies and a lot of good riffs. And I think it just shows a lot of creativity here. It's 14 songs that, aside from the three that are more your standard metal songs, everything else is pretty creative and different from each other,
Well, don't put it away, because that's my number 10 as well.
And also Wings of Tomorrow. Wings of Tomorrow, Abyss, Reign of Terror.
I was just gonna say Reign of Terror is great. Yeah, that's heavy.
And Hold On to Your Dream, Eyes of the World. Yeah, this has several songs that I go back to all the time.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally with it. It's my number 10 as well, and I agree with it. It's the last album that Tolkien would sing on, but this is the best he sounds on all those early albums.
Yeah.
In fact, his vocals are on this album not that much different than Cotapelto when he would join, right? So it's similar.
Yeah.
So and you know what's interesting too? You listen to that album, even the one before it. Tell me that Symphony X was not listening to we're not listening to these guys for inspiration, right?
Yeah. And tell me that Stradivarius or Tolkien was not listening to the first two Europe albums when he wrote these songs too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I totally.
Wings of Tomorrow, oddly enough, the title, Wings of Tomorrow, the second Europe album. I mean, there's so many songs on this album that are so influenced by those first two albums.
Yeah, big time. I remember, and you were probably, I'm assuming you were probably there when Stradivarius played. This was, I think, the last tour they did here in the U.S. with Tolkien. They played at BB King's.
Yes.
And I remember hanging out back by the bar, and who comes walking up but Mike Romeo and Russell Allen from Symphony X. And I was hanging out talking to those guys. And I remember Romeo was like, yeah, I really dig these guys. So I was like, And then when I was re-listening to these albums, I'm like, yeah, he totally got some inspiration from this band, I think.
Yeah. And I think the title track is one of their best songs ever too. I love the change, the break in the middle with the high vocals that he does.
Yeah, there's some good stuff on this album. I dig it quite a bit. And Chasing Shadows, man, that song rips, huh?
Yeah, it's a good opener.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 that I'll put on a playlist from time to time, all the time from this album.
Yeah, good stuff. And a cool album cover too. All right, back to you for number 9.
Okay. Going with Polaris. This was the first one with the new lineup. So this is a good return after the self-titled one, which was 2005. So this was 2009, right?
Yeah, it was 4 years. Yep.
Yeah. So this was with the new lineup. So this was a new bass player. Who's on this album here? You got Cotapelto. You got Jens Johansson on keyboard carrying on the band. And then you got the new guitar player.
Yep.
Oh, Jorg is still on this album, though. This is the last one I think he's on, right? Or maybe the one right after.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so Matthias is on guitars, Jorg is on drums, and Lori Pora is the bass player.
Yeah, is on bass,
right?
And yeah, Matthias Kupanen is on guitar. He kind of like after a couple albums, he kind of became like the new Tolkien in this band because he's not only playing guitar, he's producing and he's starting to write a lot of songs. So
Yep. So this is a great return from the self-titled one before it.
Yeah, I agree.
Deep Unknown is a classic Strato mid-tempo rocker. I think Winter Skies is one of the best ballads they ever wrote. It's so epic. Higher We Go is another great mid-tempo rocker, very hunting high and lowish.
Yep.
Right. Falling Star is cool, which was written by the bass player. That should have been a single too. That was very
good hooks. Yeah.
And then you got the Emancipation Suite Part 1, 2, and 3, which is pretty epic at the end.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, it's an enjoyable return. So definitely deserves to be in my 10, I think.
Well, we are once again on the same page. It's my number 9 as well. Yeah, I think they just did not miss a beat at all. I think that this album is kind of more of a prog metal album than a power metal album for me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because they do both styles pretty well. I think they're kind of a lot of their albums kind of fall like right in the middle, especially the latter period stuff, which is a little more adventurous. Tons of backing vocals on this album.
Yeah,
really nicely done. I love the production.
Big melodies,
and it just sounds like this. I don't know. You listen to some of these albums and they just have this big, immense orchestral sound to them, and it's just I know a lot of people use this term pretty liberal nowadays, but it's like ear candy, man. And some of this music really is. And I dig it. I mean, I think you mentioned most of the songs. I would have, Deep Unknown, King or Nothing's got a lot of grooves, kind of weird sounding, kind of futuristic sounding. Blind is really good. Winter Skies is amazing. Emancipation Suite is amazing. I don't know. I dig it. Really, really good album. It's my number 9.
Blind and Winter Skies is a Johansson song, both lyrics and the music. Yeah.
He's a really good musician and songwriter.
Yeah,
he's a very underrated player, I think.
He was in Yngwie Malmsteen for a few years. So.
That's right. He played with Dio. He's now with Alan Holdsworth. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff in his career.
Yeah.
He's definitely a talented man.
Yeah. All right. 8, going with Nemesis. So when did this one come out?
2013.
Yeah. So this is the third one with the new lineup. This one has a really gritty guitar sound, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the previous two. I think it's much more heavier, denser guitar sound.
Yeah.
On this album. Like on Abandoned, that's a pretty heavy opener between the riff and the guitar sound that's on that. And Unbreakable too, which I wrote down, that's one of my favorites as well. I love the changes in that, how it gets a little heavier midway through it. And I think If the Story is Over should have been nominated for a Grammy and won one. That is a brilliant ballad, nice video too that they made. And that should have won a Grammy. It's unfortunate that this band doesn't get any recognition in America, really, commercial wise.
No.
What else? But it's got some pretty heavy songs, Unbreakable, Stand My Ground, Halcyon Days. So it's got some pretty raging, I think, riffs and arrangements on this album. Yep. And Dragons is a great song too.
Yeah,
very, very catchy.
Yeah. Well, Keep It Out. That's also my number 8. I'm really amazed, Rich. We're almost on point in every one here today.
I know, it's pretty good. It's pretty awesome.
Expected. That's my favorite of the post Tolkien albums. It's just and why I don't know. Maybe I agree with you. I think it's more of a guitar heavy album.
Yeah.
It's more of kind of a straightforward. You know what it reminds me of in a weird way? Maybe a little more symphonic kind of Primal Fear album. It's got those really crunchy riffs, and I think
kind of like Seven Seals or
yes,
or what came out Seven Seals and what's after that? Fighting the Darkness is on it.
Yes.
But
I'm trying to blank on the album title, but yes, that's what I'm talking about. That album reminds me of that period Primal Fear stuff, and I think that's why I gravitate towards that one quite a bit.
That's a great call.
You mentioned all the great songs on it: Abandon, Total Rocks, Dragons is great. The title track is unbelievable. Unbreakable is a killer song. Halcyon Days. And what I really loved about this album too, it kind of brought back, which we saw a lot in the early days, those kind of guitar and keyboard solo trade-offs.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you got to go back to Yngwie stuff, right? And even the Rainbow Rising era. And that's all over that album, which we hadn't really seen, you know, since Tolkien left, because we saw a lot of that in the late 90s. But yeah, it's a great album. I totally dig it. Totally dig it.
Yep. And what's the other song? Oh, Fantasy could have been a great single too. Very popular as well. Very catchy.
Yep.
Stradivarius always had 2 or 3 of those songs on every album since Episode going forward. That should have been singles. They should have been on the radio. They should have been videos. And they were just not, I don't know if they just were not marketed right by the label or the band, or somebody dropped the ball someplace, I think.
Well, there's also a thing, you know, I mean, well, this was 2013. So in the 90s, you had a thing called grunge and alternative and new metal. So obviously that was never going to happen here.
Yeah.
But in recent years, why not, right?
I know.
Yeah, this band should have been very big here. And you almost have to wonder, were they a little bit too late to the game? Because you have to wonder if Stradivarius kind of came out in the 84, 85.
Yeah.
And released a couple of these type of albums in the late 80s.
If Fright Night and Twilight Time and Dream Space came out from 84 up to 89.
Yeah.
And they were put on MTV, then they would have probably been huge.
Yeah. Not meant to be, unfortunately, though, as history shows.
But they still became huge overseas, though. Maybe not America, but overseas they do great all over the place.
Yep, absolutely.
So what are we at? 7?
Yep.
All right. So going with Elysium. So all the same points that you mentioned. All those things. It's got a little bit of that heavier guitar sound, but it's not quite what Nemesis is, I think. It's still similar to Polaris, maybe. I think Nemesis and Eternal have more of that heavier, denser guitar sound. Right? Am I hearing that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, this is a cool album I like going back to. It's not all your standard Stradivarius arrangements. It's very atypical, and I like those kind of songs. So I wrote down Darkest Hours, Flaming Skies, Infernal Maze, all the ones you mentioned there. Lifetime in a Moment, it was really cool. Reminds me of that old Queensryche, like Rage for Order era, with those changes with the atmospheric keyboards. It's kind of moody.
Yeah. So
that's a cool one. What else? Move the Mountain is really nice. I like the change from the acoustic guitars and the piano. That's good.
You didn't hear much acoustic guitar on these albums.
What's that?
You didn't hear a lot of acoustic guitar work on these Stradivarius albums.
No.
So it really stands out on that track.
Yes. And the title track is another 18 minutes long. It's another epic prog journey.
Yep.
So, yes, I go back to this album often a lot because, like I said, it's very atypical Stradivarius. I like that.
Yeah. It's definitely another really solid record from them.
Yeah.
As is, I think, the album that came out in 2000. My number 7 is Infinite.
Mm-hmm.
Another really cool album cover. They were on Nuclear Blast at the time, right? We almost forget that they were on Nuclear Blast, right? For a spell. A lot of really good songs on here. You got Millennium, rocks really hard, but it's really catchy.
Yeah.
Hunting High and Low. I think you mentioned that before. I mean, that
was the big single. That was a video too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a memorable, catchy song.
Yeah.
You got the really emotional Mother Gaia.
Yes.
Which kind of sounds like Queen to me.
A little bit.
Like, Timo at times does these kind of Freddie Mercury things, which I think is really cool. It shows you the kind of the depth of his talents. You got Phoenix, which is this blazing power metal track. You got
love that. That's always in my playlist. Always love
Phoenix
that song.
Is great. And then you got the big epic title track, which is amazing. And I think, one of the things that I love so much about this album, it has a lot of variety on it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of variety. Only 9 tracks, but all of them are really different from each other. Not a lot of the formulaic stuff on this album. It's got a killer album cover, great production.
Yep.
Yeah, I really enjoy this one quite a bit.
Well, I'm going to piggyback you on that for my number 6. I'm going with Infinite. All the same things you said, and even the fast ones like Glory to the World and Millennium. I think this is the last album that could do those type of songs without it becoming redundant. So like I said, after this, I think I said that Destiny before, but after this album, I think it just got too much of the same. But still, those two songs I really like. I think A Million Light Years Away should have been a radio single.
Yeah.
I know it was a video, but again, another song that should have been played on radio, and it wasn't. So yes, very cool song. Very cool album. Everything on this, there's nothing bad on it.
Yeah, I agree. Just because we haven't done it yet. Let's show everybody. There's the band right there. Well,
that's the classic lineup right there.
Classic lineup right there.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you remember? So I don't know if you were at that BB King show that I was talking about earlier, but I remember, Tolkien came out, and again, this was at the height of all the issues that was going on, and he came out on stage, and he looked like he had cut his hair really short. He was overweight, and he looked like he was wearing his pajamas.
Yeah. I was gonna say he was wearing like a sweatsuit. Yeah,
and I was like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah.
But again, there was a lot of things happening at the time, so
right. Well, I guess it's understandable. You gotta.
Yeah. It just sucks. That was the only time I ever saw them.
I saw them before that, a couple of years before. I saw them for Elements Part 1 when it came out. I went to Wacken in Germany.
Oh, wow.
And they played the festival. They were one of the headliners. So I saw them still in their prime, and they were amazing.
They must have been great. Yeah, that was that. Yeah. So for me, I have kind of like weird memories of the show that I saw, because they were good, but you could tell there was a lot of shit going on at the time. So it's like, and I never saw them. I haven't seen them since, and I didn't get to see them before. So you probably saw them at their absolute peak, I can imagine.
Yes. Yeah. They should have came to America years before that for Visions came out, because Visions is such an epic album. Yeah. When that album came out, they should have been sent to America and pushed here. And
that would have been the time
later. Yeah.
Not meant to be, unfortunately. All right, my number 6. I had mentioned that I think I dig these albums more than you do, but Elements Part 2 from 2003. I like these albums a lot. I dig them. I think, like I said, I like the fact that they came out so close to each other, and they were meant to be, Part 1 and Part 2. Obviously, there's some themes going on here, but they don't really sound much like each other. I think this is heavier than the first. It's more of a progressive metal approach. You mentioned it's a pretty proggy album, and I totally agree with you. Soul of the Vagabond is a great song.
Yeah.
Eagleheart.
No, the Soul of Vagabond's on the first. Wait, you got Part 2. That's Part 1 you're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Sorry. I'm reading the wrong song. I got my notes all confused here. Definitely heavier than the first. Okay.
Yeah.
Less orchestral. The first album to me is more prog metal, lots of orchestrations and all that kind of stuff. Right. But this, Alpha and Omega, melodic, progressive. I Walk to My Own Song is your typical kind of speedy power metal. It's a good tune. I'm Still Alive, great song. Awaken the Giant has a great Cultipelto vocal. Love that quite a bit. But for me, Dreamweaver is such a great song.
It is. That's one of my favorites on there. I think I mentioned
it's catchy, heavy, and how about that guitar solo from Tolkien? Yeah. Really, really good. I dig this album a lot. I like the other one just a little bit better, but I dig this one quite a bit. I listened to these a ton when they came out, and I kind of, they did kind of a similar theme on the album covers, right?
I like that
look, which is kind of neat. But
very earthy and new age-ish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's my number 6.
Okay. So the top 5. 5 is Destiny.
Yeah.
Title track is my all-time favorite by them.
That's awesome. Yeah.
10 minutes. It's brilliant. It's heavy, melodic. It's part ballad, part rocker, part power metal, right? Part
nice build in that song. Yeah.
Build, the transitions, the whole landscape of the song is amazing. Love it. I don't think they've ever written a better song than that. I don't think. I mean, others are really great too, but that's really just a great. If you want to hear a Stradivarius song that represents the band, I think it's got all the elements in it.
Yep.
So SOS was one of the singles. That's a really cool song.
Yep.
That was the only single, actually, right?
I don't remember.
Only single in video, yeah. So No Turning Back and Rebel were your fast, raging power metal songs. 4,000 Rainy Nights is your ballad, which is nice. And Years Gone By, so you got 2 ballads on the album. Playing with Fire should have been a radio single, another one of those songs, like I said before. And that was a Cultipelto song. Didn't know that until I looked at the credits again. And Anthem of the World is another one of their great epics. I think the album starts and ends with such a great, epic, beautiful piece of music.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of my favorites.
More about that in a couple minutes. But before we get to that, let me pick up where I started before with Elements Part 1 from 2003. So again, I already mentioned more of a progressive metal approach, really orchestral. Soul of a Vagabond is a great Eagle Heart. I love Fantasia. Rich has already kind of talked about these songs, but Papillon is total prog rock, really symphonic album. I dig it quite a bit. And to me, they kind of, they come as a package deal almost. That's why they kind of fall right in line.
Funny how we both put them back to back in our ranking too.
Yeah, exactly. So, would they have made a better double album? I don't know, but I dig it quite a bit, and I listen to those quite a bit. So back to you for number 4.
4, Twilight Time. I love this album. I love it because it's still got the metal elements from Fright Night, but it's got what they're going to be doing in the future. So that's why I really enjoy this one. So
Which is the first one you heard? Which is the first Stradivarius you ever heard?
I think the album I came into them was Episode.
Okay.
And then I went back to Fourth Dimension and Dream Space and Twilight Time. But I think I got Episode and Visions right around the same time. So probably around 96, 95, 96.
Yeah.
So those were my introduction albums. But when I went back to this, I really liked how this has the metal moments from Fright Night, like Break the Ice and The Hills Have Eyes and Madness Strikes at Midnight. But it's also got the progressive elements, and then it's got the power metal from like The Hands of Time and Out of the Shadows, which are very, I guess you could say typical or standard Stradivarius power metal with the keyboards and the guitars. And then lead us into The Light is a Great Ballad. That's at the end. And I love the title track, Twilight Time. So yeah, I go through this whole album and I don't skip a song. It's great. Still love it.
Really good album. Yeah. Really good album.
Like you said, cool cover. I would like to get a shirt of this. That'd be great.
That isn't really. Yeah, I always, if you remember back in the day, like none of these albums were available domestically. You had to get them as imports.
Yeah, I had to get this at Vintage Vinyl at some point in the 90s,
Yeah, I remember seeing those album covers, and I was like, "Ooh, look at that! Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool." Yeah.
Yep. In an age of grunge and alternative and the god awful new metal. New metal. Yeah, right.
Whatever. New and you. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
All right, my number 4 was your last one, Destiny.
Yeah.
This is it's funny. I was listening to you talk about it, and my exact notes here were title track is one of their best tracks ever, and it is. Yeah. It definitely is. I think this is just a really classy, like majestic album.
Yeah.
And one of the best of, kind of the late 90s power metal, I think, for me.
Yeah.
Just the band is just clicking on all cylinders here.
Oh yeah.
And it's loaded with tracks that should have been really popular with like mainstream metal listeners. That's
right.
Kind of kills.
And that's 90. What's that? 98.
98. 98.
So unfortunately, that's where the whole
new metal thing is running.
NU, yeah, I'm going to say NU metal.
NU metal.
FU metal.
FU metal.
Well, you see how long that trend lasted, only a couple of years. So.
I know.
Who cares? But yeah, these bands, Stradivarius and all the other great bands that we talked about before, they should have been being pushed for the new wave of what metal was at the time, instead of all these other trendy subgenres.
Yeah, which none of them really lasted long. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you mentioned so many of the great songs on here. The title track, SOS, No Turning Back, is a killer metal track. 4,000 Rainy Nights is just absolutely gorgeous. Playing with Fire's got hooks to die for.
Yep.
Anthem of the World just has a little bit of everything that they do so well. I will say, it's kind of hard to make this statement, but I will say this might be, if it's not the one, it's top 3 Timo Kotapelto vocal performance overall on this album. He is amazing on this album.
You know what, too? That's before the Elements albums, where he really got too high, I think, at times with his delivery. That's right in the middle. It's not too high. It's right in the mid-range, or it's high, and it's not too high. I think it's great.
Yeah, yeah, awesome stuff. Really, really good album, and another killer album cover. I mean, I remember when this first came out, I was like, look at that, you know?
Yeah.
Good
And I
stuff.
like the reissue that they did too. They expanded on that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so the top three.
Top three. Going with obviously one of the classics that everybody probably would put this at their top, but it's not quite there for me. I mean, it's in the top three, so it's really close to one as you can get. So what year was this? 97 for Visions?
1997. Yep.
97. So yeah, this is loaded with classics that they still play to this day. The Kiss of Judas, Black Diamond is their all-time classic, which is a Cult of Pelto song.
Yep.
I would figure it would have been a Tolkien, but it's Cult of Pelto. Forever Free, I love that riff. Before the Winter and Coming Home are probably their two most well-known classic ballads. What else? Legions is a good heavy rocker. Holy Lights, the instrumental. Paradise, that should have been a single. Another song that's catchy and hooky. That should have been on the radio. And the Visions is 10 minutes long. Another epic, which is probably my second favorite next to Destiny.
Can't argue that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say the top three for me is nearly impossible to rank. I changed mine over and over again, and finally I said, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna kind of stick with, you know. So if you could, Rich, if you could pull out your Fourth Dimension, that's my number three. That's what I went with. Another amazing album cover.
Yes.
And you know, the first with the new singer, right? Timo Cota, who's this guy? Timo Cotapelto, right? And he knocks it out of the park in a big way.
Yep.
You got Against the Wind, which is just this great anthemic track. You got Distant Skies, which has hooks to die for.
Yep.
How about that killer guitar solo in the really memorable song Galaxies? Right?
Yes.
You know, I mean, this was a time where they were really pushing Timo Tolkki as like the next big guitar hero. Winter, killer song.
Yeah, ballad.
You know, how about the instrumental Stradivarius?
Yes.
Amazing, right? Just loads of scorching neoclassical shredding from Tolkki. Twilight Symphony is a total prog metal classic.
Love it.
We Hold the Key is just grand and majestic. I mean, it's a killer album. And, you know, it's funny, like right before we went on the air, I looked at my list again and I'm like, oh, I could easily put that at number one or number two.
I know, same thing here, right?
And I was just like,
this is an interesting album because it's got Tuomo Lasella, the drummer. This is his last album.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's still half the old lineup and partly going to be what the new lineup is. So you got still the same keyboard, I think. Keyboard player, right? Yeah.
Original
still
guy.
The same keyboard. Yeah, still the same keyboard player. The bass player is Jerry, who this is his first album he showed up on. And then Lasilla is the drummer. So half old and part what's going to be the new lineup.
Yeah. Great album. Really great. And another great album cover. And I was kind of really dug their original logo, you know, that logo that they did on that album and episode. I think that's pretty cool. I know they were kind of messing around with it.
Yeah, changed by Visions.
By Visions it changed. Yeah, and the one on Visions is just like pretty plain. They would play around with a couple different things.
Yeah, I like the old one.
Yeah, me too. Because a lot of the later albums just really don't have much of a logo. It's just kind of bland. I think that's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, the when they got to Visions, that's where they put the little symbol in there too.
Yeah,
part of their.
It would carry over. Yeah.
Yeah, the part of the logo. So I'll keep up Fourth Dimension because that's my number two.
Cool.
All the same points you made. I think We Hold the Key is an all-time classic. Same thing with Distant Skies and Against the Wind. It's still another one of those albums where it's got the metal riffs, but it's going into the power metal direction. And it still has the experimentation from Dream Space. Like on the number one, what is that? 030366?
Yeah.
Right? And what's the other song on there? The song Stradivarius too, the instrumental.
Yeah, that's good.
Reminds me so much of Rage for Order, Queensryche, right?
A little bit. Yep.
Yeah. So yes, I love this album. Go back to it all the time. Twilight Symphony, Galaxies. Yeah, all these songs end up on my playlist all the time.
Classic stuff.
Yeah.
Classic stuff. And the snow has started falling here in New York.
And it stopped here. As we come to the end of our video about Stradivarius, the snow stops here and moves to you. God, the irony of this one today, right?
Yeah, telling you. All right, my number 2, again, could be my number 1 next week if you ask me. It's this is really tough to do, but I'm going with Episode from 1996 is my number 2. It's an amazing record. This is the first with Mr. Johansson. So, he spent a number of years with Yngwie, a couple of years with Dio, and then, he's been with these guys ever since. And this is just, to me, this is the album that, and it's even hard to say this, it's almost like, because I think their classic sound started with Fourth Dimension, but with this album, classic lineup, and even further cementing the classic sound. I mean, there's just, pedal to the metal, blazing neoclassical power metal mixed with that symphonic metal edge. I mean, there's so many great songs on here. Father Time, Will the Sun Rise has some killer riffs in it. You got the melodic and progressive Eternity, which is another great song. Season Change, so majestic, just so memorable. You got Stratosphere, which is another instrumental guitar extravaganza from Tolkien.
Very good one.
Yeah, I mean, the epic Babylon.
Yep.
I mean, does it get much better than that? Nighttime Eclipse. I mean, so many great songs on here. It's just top to bottom, really strong. Like I said, on any given day, any of these top 3 for me could be number 1. At some point.
Obviously, we have the same top 3, just shuffle a little differently.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So really difficult. But that's another really great album cover, I think.
Yep. Well, that's my number 1.
There you go.
All the same points you said. I like how Father Time still has the heavy riff from like the past, from the earlier albums, but then you have the more progressive movements like in Eternity. And then you have like an acoustic ballad like Forever. And then you have a catchy hook like in Tomorrow. But then you have another ballad like Season of Change, which has more changes and movements throughout it. It's really a well-balanced Stradivarius album. It has all the great elements that you would see going forward. Yeah, that's why it's my number 1. I think it really is a great representation of what it is at the time and what it would become later.
Yep. Totally agree. Yeah, it's great. Well, in case you haven't been following or you're wondering what my number 1 album is, it shouldn't be a surprise. Visions is my number 1. I mean, there's when you talk to most people who've been following this band for a long time, generally speaking, that Rich and mine, our top 3 are generally one of any one of those usually are
just shuffled. And it's funny that they're 3 years right in a row. Fourth Dimension's 95, Episode's 96, and Visions 97.
Yeah, it's like boom, 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 right? And they just the creativity was just like spewing out of this band. And there's just to me, this album, I mean, this puts it all together. And we've talked a couple times already in this episode about how this band had all the tools to be really popular on more of a mainstream kind of stage. And it's mind-boggling when you listen to these albums and you're thinking, God, how is this not like a bestseller here in this country? Because this album is really accessible, really catchy. There's great melodies all over the place. The guitar work is absolutely killer. You got Jens is playing some amazing keyboard and synth lines throughout this album, and the vocals are just absolutely amazing. And there's so many great anthems on here. The Kiss of Judas, Black Diamond, two killer songs to kick off the album. Forever Free is outstanding. Before the Winter, really epic sounding. You got Legions, which Rich mentioned, another killer song.
Heavy song.
Yeah, I mean, it's just there's no weak tracks on here at all.
None. What's cool about this album too is that Kiss of Judas is not your standard heavy, fast power metal rager. It's got the bass and the drum that kicks off the song and the album. It's more of a mid-pace, heavy rocker, which was really cool. Instead of having Black Diamond open the album, I like that. That's what I really like about that one.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good kind of variety of tunes on here, but they're all really memorable. And I think if you're at all mildly interested in exploring like kind of neoclassical power / progressive metal, you can't go wrong with these. You really
start with these 3. And you go from there. You go backwards and forwards.
I mean, I will say, I know there's probably people who disagree with this, but I will say I would, any day of the week, I would rather listen to Stratovarius than Hammerfall. To me, Hammerfall is, most of their output is very formulaic. There's some great stuff throughout their albums, but I find, for me personally, there's much more variety and stuff for me to sink my teeth into in the Stradivarius discography.
Yeah, Hammerfall is more your meat and potatoes power metal, like, you know, like yeah, it's kind of like Man of War meets Accept, I would say, which isn't bad, but yeah,
no, it's not. It's not.
They can get into a little bit of a formula, just like Primal Fear has the same issue sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
for me, I mean, Stradivarius brought a lot more to the table, I think.
Yeah. Did you ever do a Hammerfall ranking? I don't remember.
I did a top 10 song show. I have not done a ranking because I don't own a ton of their catalog, and yeah, it's like I'm not the hugest fan. I mean, I like some of their stuff. I just, you know, they have a lot of albums, and I don't have like half of them or more, you know. So
their first four are like mandatory power metal, I would say.
Well, those are the best. Yeah.
Glory to the Brave, Legacy of Kings, Renegade, Crimson Thunder. Was that the next one? No, that's a song off that album.
Yeah. Well, Legacy of Kings is a really good album.
Yeah, that's love it. Essential power metal. Yeah,
that's very strong.
Yeah, they were on my list when we did our power metal episode.
Yep.
Legacy of Kings. Yep.
So there we have it.
Yeah.
15 albums in total, ranked here. Rich and I were pretty much, for the most part, about 60% pretty in sync on this list. So
yeah, aside from Elements 1 and 2, you know, yours were more towards the top, mine were towards the bottom.
Yeah, the big differences were the two Elements albums and where Twilight Times sat.
Right.
Other than that, we were pretty much spot on for the most part.
Yeah. I got to look up that Hammerfall album now because I don't want to. Someone's going to yell at me. I got to find it. Crimson Thunder. That was the album. Crimson Thunder. And then Chapter 5 was really good too, from 2005.
Yeah, that was not bad. That was not bad.
Yeah, from 97 to 2005, that was awesome albums right there. That's a great string of records.
Yeah, I caught them at BB King's once, and they were excellent. I interviewed the then bass player, he's not with the band anymore, backstage that night, and they were quite good. That was the first time I'd ever seen them. I was like, oh, this is pretty
great live. I saw them about a year ago when they played Brooklyn for the new album. Do you remember that?
I remember when they played. I didn't go, but yeah.
Brooklyn or the Bronx, and they did like a record release thing. That was excellent. They played a small little place and just packed it out.
Yeah, you would expect.
Yeah.
Very cool. So for everybody watching, feel free to rank these albums as you like them. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here. Everybody hears these albums differently. If you want to do your top 5, your top 10, or all 15, have at it. Put it in the comments below. Rich and I will be taking a look in the coming days and commenting on your comments and adding our input. So thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Rich, you want to give a couple plugs before we let you go?
Sure. Metalasylum.net, Brave Words Magazine, and the Metal Hall of Fame, all three of which I contribute to. And thanks everybody for watching a couple of videos that made your year-end list. The power metal one, and what was the other one that was very popular?
The thrash one.
Thrash one. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching that. That's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool to kind of go through all those comments and kind of put together like I call it the spreadsheet of doom to try and figure out which was voted on and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, we got so many videos got a lot of love. It's just you can obviously you only want to pick the most popular ones, but so many different ones got a lot of love. And so it's really cool how a lot of people watch a lot of the videos. Even if it's like stuff that they may, genres or bands that they may not be that much into, they watch anyway, just because they love the, love what we have to say. And whether it's, me with you or Martin or Chris Sal or Steve Keel or whoever it might be, or me by myself, it's like, I think people just dig what we've got going on here. So it's,
and hopefully like it changes their mind about a band. Like when we did Europe and no, did we do Europe? No, you did that with somebody else.
Yeah, no, I didn't do Europe with you, but I did.
We did White Lion and Extreme.
And Winger.
Hopefully we change people's minds about, some of those bands when we do those.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what it's all about, because sometimes people, they only hear a small amount of a catalog and they have an opinion on that, and they don't buy, they may or may not like it, and they don't bother to explore other stuff. I mean, Europe is a perfect example of that, where, the entire population knows one or two songs and
Right.
they've been played to death, and they think the rest of the catalog is like that, when in actuality it's nothing like those songs, right?
Nothing like that. Similar, but nothing like it. There's so much more.
Yeah.
Just like with Stradivarius, we're talking about them. It's not all speedy power metal all the time.
No.
Same thing with Halloween. Same thing with Gamma Ray. Same thing with Blind Guardian. It's not all the same every album. You got to just listen to the album.
Yep, absolutely. So there you have it, everybody. So I want to thank Rich once again for jumping on here to talk about some Stradivarius. We'll be seeing him in the weeks ahead here on the channel. And,
thanks, everyone.
Again, Happy New Year to everybody. And
Yes.
We'll see you all tomorrow night for Monday night Must-See TV with the Hudson Valley Squares and all sorts of stuff coming up this week. Cool. Martin Popoff and I will be ranking the catalog of Accept, as well as
nice.
Plant Solo. So that's all coming up over the next week and a half, and lots of other stuff. So stay tuned, and we'll see you all then. Take care. For Rich Catino, I am Pete Pardo.
Later, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.